Hi everyone, I'm Nick Olivo, and today we're looking at the D&D 5th edition adventure Drow Hard, which asks the question, what would it be like if your D&D character was John McClane, going up against a dark elf with the personality of Hans Gruber in an underground cloning facility that's modeled after the Nagatomi Plaza? Well, the answer is you get a whole lot of fun, laughs, and pulpy adventure. Before we dive in, I'd just like to thank Roll20 for sponsoring this video. Drow Hard was written by DM Dave with maps by Tom Cardos, and this is available on the Roll20 marketplace, as well as available from DM Dave's website as a PDF. What makes this adventure unique is that it's intended for a single player character of 5th level. Players can make whatever kind of character they'd like, and that character is going to become this world's John McClane. So the plot of this adventure follows the plot of the film Die Hard. Your player character is invited to the Nagatomi cloning facility as a guest for a holiday party, and shortly after they arrive, the facility is taken over by Drow terrorists, and all of the partygoers are taken hostage. Now, as in the film, the Drow's true intent is to gain access to a vault filled with magical artifacts. There are 4 locks protecting those artifacts, and the Drow have a safecracker along with them who can bypass the first 3. But the 4th one is powered by an artifact that is off-site, and so the only way that they can get past that 4th lock is by telling the local militia that they've taken over the facility. The local militia will start running the anti-terrorist playbook, which involves shutting off the power to the building, at which point that 4th lock will be bypassed, and the Drow can go in, get access to all the treasure, and then get out through an extra-dimensional rift that's in the basement of the facility. That's your basic plot. Let's take a look at what's inside the adventure. So included in the adventure is this splash page. You also get a page filled with all of the tokens, and the artwork for all these tokens, actually the artwork in general in this module is excellent. So you can come through and you can just take a quick look at all of these here. So this is Hana, this is the Drow leader. Then you've got Carla, who, if you remember Carl from the movie Die Hard. I mean, I just love this picture right here. This is just a very threatening image, and if you remember what Carl looks like from Die Hard, you can almost see a resemblance there. And then you've got some other creatures in here. You got some commoners, some nobles that you're going to come across. But these images in general, these are just all very good, very quality pictures that are going to come through here. You don't get stuck with any tokens that are just labeled noble or guard. You have some modules that are like that. So there's full color artwork throughout this module for all of the maps and the tokens, and they are just fantastic. So speaking of the map, let's take a look at the main map where the player is going to be running through. And I'm going to zoom this out down to about 40% because I want you to see the scale of this map. The map is actually divided into 6 sections. You've got the 3 levels of the Nagatomi facility. There's the landing facility where your player would have come in and been walked down, the laboratory level, and then the dungeon level, which is where the vault is that the Drow are trying to get to. And you've got 2 different views of each of these floors. You've got the main view, and then on the right, you've got the view of what it looks like inside the air ducts for that floor. And just to kind of give you a feel for what that looks like, I'm going to look through my player's eyes while he's in the ducts here, and you can see as he gets closer to a grate, he's got some vision that comes through out there, and you can kind of see into the room that he's looking at. And if we move him down to here, it's going to be a similar thing. He can kind of see into this room below, sort of see what's going on. And this really, I think, is a neat effect and gives some wonderful flavor to the adventure itself. And I thought this was a really clever and cool thing to include in the module because that's like one of Die Hard's quintessential scenes is Bruce Willis crawling through the ducts in the building. And your character is going to be doing that an awful lot if they want to. Okay, so zooming back in, your player is going to start out in room 11A, which is on the 2nd floor. This is a suite where they're going to clean up after their flight into the facility. At this point, this is when the Drow start coming down and taking over, and so your player has a couple of places they can hide. They can try and hide in the bathroom. There's actually a secret passage here in Area 11C, and of course, right here above the desk is an entrance into the air ducts. Now, your player, just like in the film, is not going to have any equipment, no armor, no weapons. If they're a spellcaster, they've got access to their spells, of course, but if your character is more of a martial fighter, they're going to be without any weapons. There are several places throughout the facility where equipment can be found. So there are some supply cabinets here in Area 7 on the second floor. There are a couple of closets on the first floor as well where you can find tools like picks or shovels that can be used as improvised weapons. Mops and brooms can be used as quarterstaffs. So there's all that type of stuff listed out in the module. But there are other rooms in this map that you can scrounge equipment from. So like, for example, right here, there's a kitchen in Area 9. Now, the adventure doesn't specifically spell out that there would be any like knives or things like that here, but of course there should be, right? You should be able to get like some steak knives or something from the kitchen, or maybe a rolling pin that you could use as a club. You know, be ready to improvise a lot with this adventure, because there are a lot of places where there are storage lockers or cabinets or people's foot lockers where what they might have in those isn't really spelled out. And if you're player is a MacGyver-y type who wants to try and make, say, alchemist's fire out of cleaning supplies, then by all means give them the ability to do so. Really have fun with this module. This is a pulpy, campy one-shot. Play that up to the utmost. Now, because this module is based off of such a well-known and well-loved film, it is next to impossible for your player to not metagame. Play into that, okay? Go ahead, watch Die Hard with them once or twice before you go ahead and run this module. That'll just make it more fun, because then you'll both be quoting the movie as you go along. You'll be having John McClane and Hans Gruber's lines being thrown back at one another. It'll just make for a more fun experience. Now, a few things that you as the GM should be ready for ahead of time. First and foremost, all of the Drow NPCs have macros available for initiative, their resistances and immunities, and their saving throws. But there are no macros for their attack rolls. So if you want to have a macro bar with all of their attack rolls, I'd suggest using the token action script that I've done a video on in the past. I'll pop a card up there to that so you can check it out. And what that'll do is give you a list of all their attacks and special abilities in addition to the initiative, saving throws, and resistances that you see there. Also, if we look at the dynamic lighting layer here, there are a ton of doors throughout this facility. And when we look through our player's eyes, it's not always obvious where those doors are. So for example, right here, there is a door going into the bathroom. It's not really immediately obvious that there is a door there. Similarly, coming down this hallway, there are doors going into each of these living chambers and into the supply closets. So what you might want to do is sort of what I've done in this hallway here, put in these little door markers. I'll put a link down to where you can find these in the description. This does add some noise onto the map, but if you look at this hallway just as it is, it's very difficult to determine that there's a door here and here and here and here. It's very subtle, and your player may not even realize that there are doors available. Plus, with how many doors there are here, it's like, okay, where was that again? You know, and then you as the GM are pinging multiple places, and that's not a really clean experience for your player. So putting markers in play to show where the doors are, I think, will make life easier for them. Also, due to the sheer number of doors that you're going to be dealing with, I would recommend using the Door Knocker API script to quickly toggle those doors open and shut, especially if your player is saying, hey, I'm going to jump into this room and shut the door behind me so I can try and avoid the drow that's coming down the hall. And I'll pop a card up in the top there to a video that shows how to use that script too. Now, one thing to keep in mind is it can get a little cumbersome toggling between the normal view of the map and the duct view. So to help smooth that out, what I recommend you do is have a copy of your player's token in each section of the map, but keep it on the GM layer on everywhere except where they're actually playing. So right now my player is moving through this section here. They want to jump up into the ducts. So what I'm going to do is right click, move them to the GM layer, scoot over to the right side of the map here. I already have their token in the ducts up here on the GM layer. I'm just going to switch over and move them into the token layer real fast. And now they're ready to go and they're looking around through the ducts. That's just easier than trying to drag their token from one section of the map to the other, and I think just makes for a cleaner experience. Now, you may be wondering, well, Nick, why would you do that? Why not just drag the character into the ducts as they were on that initial map? Well, the ducts on that initial map are more of a transparent overlay, and so when you look at your character, like if I go into the GM layer here, move him back to the token layer, and then look through my player's eyes, even though it looks like they're in the ducts right now, they're still seeing the whole room. So the ducts are more of an overlay, so your player knows that above them is a duct that they could get into, whereas over here on the right side of the map, the ducts actually have the dynamic lighting lines enabled so that the player can't see through them as they're moving along. Throughout the module, there are several references to the Drow being in telepathic contact with one another, and then when Hannah Gruber reaches out to the militia to make her demands, she does so via a sending spell. While that works mechanically in-game, it eliminates the ability for the player to overhear any of the chatter between the Drow or between the Drow and the militia. So what I recommend you do is just change that so that each of the Drow has a sending stone with them that they can use to communicate with the entire group, and so then the player can also make contact with the outside, with the militia, and be able to overhear when Hannah Gruber contacts the militia as well. The other thing I'd suggest you change is the command phrase that Hannah will use to blow up the building. So just like in the movie, they're going to try and blow up part of the building while they make their escape. The phrase that's in there right now is yippee-ki-yay. Hans Gruber would not use yippee-ki-yay. In fact, I don't think he'd ever uttered that expression until he met Bruce Willis. So what I would recommend you do here is change that to something a little more in character for Hannah Gruber. Something like Loxley, Always, Potter, by Grabthar's Hammer, or what I went with, Nala Namkir, which is undercommon for a really awesome actor. Now eventually, your player is going to get down to Area 23. This is the vault where the artifacts are stored. And the text of the adventure does not tell exactly what is in the vault, but it does provide a link to another website where you can see a whole bunch of sample artifacts that you could put in here. My advice here is just have fun. Okay, it's so rare for a player to actually get their hands on an artifact. So forget things like balance and attunement and anything like that, and just put in 5 or 6 items that you think are going to be fun. So I threw in some astral caltrops. I put in this dagger that allowed the player to cast spells and get damage bonuses. I put in this tentacle whip that had like a strangulation effect. And so what wound up happening was my player got his hands on the dagger and Hannah Gruber got her hands on the whip, and they had this epic artifact duel that my player is still talking about a month after we ran the adventure. So just go in and have a lot of fun with this part. Now, there are no pre-generated characters included with the module, which I thought was kind of a bummer, but no problem. You know, you can have your player create one specifically for the purpose of this adventure. My player created a ranger called Clain McJohn. Clain McJohn is a Gloomstalker ranger. Gloomstalkers come from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and the feature that really saved Clain McJohn's bacon multiple times is an ability called Dark Vision Invisibility, which means that the character is effectively invisible to a creature that relies on dark vision to see it. So when you get to the point in the adventure when the power gets cut to the facility and all the lights go out, all of a sudden Clain McJohn was totally invisible to the Drow, and that really gave him an edge. Now, the module does mention that classes like wizards and warlocks or other folks that have area effect spells will do better in this module because they'll be able to take out groups of Drow at once. I totally agree with that, but you can definitely survive this adventure and complete it as a more martial character type. The other thing I would recommend is turn on hero points on your player's character sheet. If you're not familiar with hero points, you can roll a d6 and get a bonus to an attack roll or a saving throw or something like that. And given the pulpy feel of this adventure, hero points really seem to fit in. And, there were some times when my player would make an attack roll and he would miss by like 1. So you narrate that, the shot looks like it's just gonna miss, and then he would roll a hero point die there, and the attack would turn into a hit, and then it's glorious. So those can be enabled by going into the cog on the character sheet here, scroll down on the right-hand side, and flip this hero points switch to on. My one main criticism about this adventure is actually to do with the map. The map of the Nagatomi cloning facility is enormous. It's 68 by 66. That's huge. That's on par with some levels from Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And maps that big really bog down with dynamic lighting. I mean, I really would have preferred them to have put each floor as its own page. Moving between the ducts and the main floor is one thing. You want to jump back and forth between those really fast, but moving between floors isn't something that happened as frequently. So having each floor as its own page, I think would have been a smoother experience and wouldn't have bogged the system down as much. I found that when I first loaded this adventure up, just scrolling through the map, it was very, very slow, painfully so even. So I tried doing a couple of different things. I tried turning off the token vision for all of the tokens except for my player character, because every one of these tokens had vision enabled, and that will bog things down. What I wound up doing was actually switching this page back to legacy dynamic lighting, and then it ran smoother. But this map is just so enormous that all of the dynamic lighting effects really kind of bog it down. So long story short, if you're a fan of the movie Die Hard and you have a player who's a fan of that movie too, you can't go wrong playing this module. We had a blast. I highly recommend that you check it out. In the meantime, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please give it a like and consider subscribing. Until next time, folks, have a great day.